Maid opens the bedroom door and sees the baby crying. But what was on the bed made her tremble. Patricia Williams had worked for nearly 5 years at the Morrison residence in the Upper East Side, a wealthy neighborhood of New York, and had never witnessed a scene like that. Businessman Michael Morrison had always been a controlled and elegant man, one of those who never let any vulnerability show, but at that moment, he was completely destroyed. It was while going upstairs to organize the master bedroom that Patricia found baby Joshua crying desperately on the king-size bed, while Michael remained seated on the marble floor with his head buried in his hands. The child's crying was enough to take anyone's breath away, but what really made Patricia's heart race were the documents scattered on the white duvet, divorce papers still damp with tears, collection letters from the courthouse, and a medical report she could partially read. The words paternity test and genetic incompatibility jumped out at her like stab wounds. Michael didn't notice her presence at first, lost in his own despair. Patricia stood frozen in the doorway, still holding the basket of clean clothes, trying to process what she was seeing. The man who had always treated her with formal but distant politeness now seemed like a castaway amid the wreckage of his life. The baby, only 8 months old, continued crying, stretching his little arms upward as if asking to be held, but Michael seemed unable to react. When he finally looked up and saw Patricia standing there, Michael tried to compose himself quickly. He wiped his hands across his face to dry the tears and stood up staggering, trying to gather the scattered papers with uncoordinated movements. His hands were shaking so much that some documents fell to the floor again, and he seemed unable to form a coherent sentence. "Patricia, sorry, you weren't supposed to see me. You weren't," he murmured, his voice choked. Could you please take care of Joshua while I need—" But before he could finish the sentence, Michael staggered and had to lean against the wall. Patricia immediately dropped the laundry basket and ran to pick up the baby, who was red from crying so much. When she lifted him into her arms, Joshua gradually calmed down, nestling in her arms as if recognizing her as a source of security. "You need to sit for a while," said Patricia in her firm but gentle voice. "Let me take care of the baby while you recover." Michael nodded weakly and let himself fall into the armchair in the corner of the room, watching as Patricia rocked Joshua naturally. It was evident that she had experience with children, something he had never noticed before. The baby stopped crying completely and began babbling soft sounds, playing with the buttons on Patricia's navy blue uniform. During the following minutes, a heavy silence filled the room, broken only by the soft sounds Joshua made while exploring Patricia's caring face. Michael watched the scene with a mixture of gratitude and bitterness, realizing that a woman he had known for years could calm the baby better than he could. "Jennifer is gone," Michael said suddenly, breaking the silence. His voice sounded hollow, as if the words came from very far away. She took everything, the jewelry, the money from the joint account, even the family photos, left only these papers and Joshua." Patricia continued rocking the baby, but her ears were attentive to every word. She had known Jennifer Morrison for 5 years as well, since she started working at the house. An elegant woman, always well-dressed, but who showed little affection for both her husband and her son. Patricia had always thought her coldness toward the baby was strange, but she never imagined it would come to this. "When did she leave, Mr. Michael?" asked Patricia softly, using the respectful tone she always maintained, but filled with genuine concern. "Yesterday morning," he replied, running his hands through his dark hair that was now completely disheveled. "I was in an important meeting when she must have packed her bags. When I got home in the evening, I found only a note saying our life together was over and that she couldn't pretend anymore. These documents were on the dining room table." Patricia felt a tightness in her chest. She had always known the Morrisons' marriage wasn't the warmest, but she never imagined it was a complete sham. All these years, she had watched Jennifer act like a devoted wife in front of guests, but noticed how she avoided displays of affection when alone with the family. And Joshua? How could she leave such a young child? Asked Patricia, gently kissing the baby's forehead as he dozed peacefully in her arms. Michael let out a bitter laugh that sounded more like a sob. "Because he's not even my son, Patricia. The DNA test she hid from me for months is right there in those papers. Joshua doesn't have any of my genes. All this time I've cared for, loved, and worried about a child who isn't even—" His voice faded until it became just a pain-filled whisper. Patricia felt her legs weaken. She looked at Joshua's angelic face, sleeping peacefully in her arms, completely unaware of the drama surrounding him. How could a mother abandon such a small and innocent child, regardless of who the biological father was? "But you've raised this boy since he was born," said Patricia firmly. "Blood isn't everything, Mr. Michael. You saw his first steps, heard his first words." "What words, Patricia?" interrupted Michael bitterly. "I was always working. You or Jennifer were the ones taking care of him. I barely knew my own—" He corrected himself. "Joshua. And now I find out he wasn't even mine." Patricia realized she needed to proceed very carefully. Michael was clearly in shock, mixing the pain of betrayal with confused rejection toward the baby. She knew similar stories from her neighborhood in Queens, but had never witnessed anything so close to home. "Would you like me to make some tea? Maybe something to eat?" she offered, trying to bring him back to practical reality. "No, thank you," replied Michael, standing up abruptly. "Actually, Patricia, I need to go out. I have to sort some things out at the courthouse and the bank. Jennifer, she emptied our joint account before leaving. I need to see what's left and how I'm going to manage financially." Patricia grew worried. Michael was clearly in no emotional state to drive, but she knew it wasn't her place to question him directly. "And Joshua, would you like me to stay here with him while you take care of these matters?" "Yes, please," said Michael, already heading toward the master bathroom. I don't know how long I'll be. Maybe it's better if you stay until I get back. Can you prepare his bottle when it's time? There are still some cans of powdered milk in the kitchen." 20 minutes later, Patricia heard the garage door close and the sound of Michael's car driving away. She was alone in the mansion with Joshua, who was now playing on the bedroom's plush carpet, completely oblivious to the tragedy that had befallen his young life. While organizing the papers still scattered on the bed, Patricia had the opportunity to read more details about the situation. The DNA test was categorical. Michael Morrison was not the biological father of Joshua Williams Morrison. What shocked her most was the date on the test. It had been done 3 months ago, which meant Patricia had known the truth for a long time and kept pretending everything was normal. There was also a letter from a lawyer explaining that Patricia was formally relinquishing custody of the child and would not claim child support, provided Michael took full responsibility for the boy. It was as if she were getting rid of a problem, not abandoning a child. Patricia felt a growing anger toward Jennifer, but also a deep concern for Joshua. What would happen to him now? Michael was clearly shaken and confused about his feelings toward the baby. What if he decided to put the child up for adoption? The thought made her heart tighten. She went down to the kitchen carrying Joshua and prepared a carefully made bottle. The baby drank it all eagerly, showing he had been hungry for a while. Patricia noticed there were dirty diapers and signs that basic care was being neglected. Probably since Jennifer left, Michael had been trying to care for the baby alone, but didn't quite know how. After giving Joshua a bath and changing his clothes, Patricia settled in the living room, watching the baby play with some educational toys scattered around. The house, usually impeccable, showed clear signs of neglect from recent days. Dishes in the sink, unopened mail on the sideboard, and a general feeling of abandonment. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing, Michael returned only in the late afternoon, looking even more dejected than when he had left. He found Patricia in the living room, tidying up some toys while Joshua dozed on the sofa, surrounded by pillows to keep him from falling. "How did he behave?" asked Michael, but his voice sounded distant, as if the question were just a formality. "Very well, Mr. Michael. He drank the whole bottle, played a bit, and is now resting," replied Patricia, studying his expression. "Were you able to sort out your affairs?" "More or less," sighed Michael, taking off his suit jacket and tossing it carelessly over an armchair. "Jennifer really emptied our main account. Only the money in my personal account was left, which fortunately she didn't have access to. but the amount she took represents almost 2 years of emergency savings. Patricia noticed that Michael was avoiding looking directly at Joshua. Whenever his eyes drifted toward the baby, he quickly looked away at anything else in the room. "Mr. Michael, may I ask a question?" said Patricia hesitantly. "Of course, go ahead." "What are you thinking of doing about Joshua?" The question seemed to hit Michael like a punch. He paused for a few seconds, staring at his own shoes before answering. "I don't know, Patricia. Honestly, I don't know. Until yesterday, I thought he was my son. I made plans for his future, for his education, for everything. Now I've discovered that the whole foundation of our family was a lie. How can I look at him and not think of Jennifer's betrayal?" "But he's just an innocent baby," Patricia replied gently. "Joshua had no part in what happened. He's known you as his father since he was born." "That's exactly why it's so hard, Patricia," said Michael, finally sitting down and burying his face in his hands again. "If he were a complete stranger, it would be easier to make a rational decision. But I've formed bonds with him. When he said Dada for the first time, I cried with emotion. When he had a high fever for those 2 days, I didn't sleep a wink all night. And now to find out that... His voice trailed off again, but Patricia understood perfectly the conflict he was going through. It was a situation that pitted the genuine feelings he had developed for the baby against the brutal pain of discovering that everything had been based on a lie. "Would you like me to prepare dinner?" offered Patricia, trying to normalize the situation a bit. "And I can also stay a little longer to help with Joshua, if you need." "That would be a great help, Patricia," admitted Michael. "I still don't know how to take care of him alone. Last night was a nightmare. He cried for hours and I didn't know what to do. I tried giving him a bottle, changing his diaper, rocking him. Nothing worked." "Babies can sense when adults are nervous or sad," Patricia explained patiently. "He was probably feeling that something was wrong. Young children are very sensitive to the emotional atmosphere of the home." While preparing a simple dinner in the kitchen, Patricia reflected on the complexity of the situation. She had raised 3 children alone after her husband left when they were still young, so she knew very well how a child can be affected by the emotional instability of the adults around them. Looking through the kitchen window, she saw Michael in the living room, sitting on the sofa next to Joshua, who was still sleeping. He wasn't touching the baby, but he also didn't move away, as if he were internally struggling between the impulses to get closer and to pull away. During dinner, Michael barely touched the food Patricia had prepared. She noticed that he probably hadn't been eating properly since Jennifer left, another sign that he needed support to get through this difficult phase. "Mr. Morrison, do you have family? Parents? Siblings? Anyone who can help at this time?" asked Patricia, while trying to get Joshua to accept a few spoonfuls of baby food. "My parents died a few years ago," Michael replied mechanically. "I only have an older sister, Rebecca, but she lives in Boston with her family. We don't talk much, only on holidays. We're not very close." "Maybe it's time to talk to her about what's happening," suggested Patricia. "Sometimes an outsider can help you see things more clearly." "I don't want anyone to know yet, Patricia," Michael said quickly. "It's too humiliating to admit I was deceived for so long, that I built a whole life on lies. I need some time to process all of this before involving other people." Patricia understood his wounded pride, but also worried about the isolation. Michael clearly needed emotional support, but his pride was preventing him from seeking help. It was a pattern she had seen in other successful men, the difficulty of admitting vulnerability. When it was time to put Joshua to sleep, Michael accompanied Patricia to the baby's room, but kept his distance while she gave him a bath, changed his diaper, and put on his pajamas. The baby was unusually fussy, as if sensing the tension in the air. "Has he always had trouble sleeping?" asked Patricia, noticing that Joshua was resisting lying down in the crib. "No, he's usually very calm at night," replied Michael. "Ever since Jennifer, since the day before yesterday, he's been more restless. Maybe he misses her, I don't know." Patricia rocked Joshua a little more, humming a lullaby she used to sing to her own children. Gradually, the baby relaxed and finally fell asleep in her arms. She carefully laid him down in the crib and watched for a few minutes to make sure he was really asleep. "You have a special way with children," Michael commented when they left the room. I've never been able to calm him down so easily. It's practice, Mr. Morrison. I raised 3 children alone after my husband left us. I learned out of necessity, explained Patricia, without drama, just as a fact of life. Michael stopped walking and looked at her more closely for the first time in 5 years of living together. I didn't know that, Patricia. I didn't know you had gone through a similar situation. You never asked, and I never had a reason to tell you, she replied simply. But I understand a little of what you're feeling now. The sensation that the ground has disappeared beneath your feet. They went down together to the living room, where Michael finally allowed himself a glass of whiskey, the first alcohol Patricia had seen him consume in all these years. She felt slightly worried, knowing that alcohol can be a dangerous escape in times of emotional crisis. "Patricia, may I ask another favor?" said Michael after a few sips. "Could you stay here tonight? I don't feel ready to take care of Joshua alone if he wakes up during the night." "Of course, Mr. Michael. I'll call my daughter Emily to let her know I won't be home today," replied Patricia, taking her cell phone from her purse. "You can use the landline here, no need to use your cell phone minutes," offered Michael. It was a small gesture of consideration, but Patricia noticed. Perhaps the extreme situation was making Michael see the people around him differently. During the night, Joshua woke up crying twice. Both times, Patricia quickly got up from the guest room where she was sleeping and went to take care of him. Michael appeared at the baby's door both times, watching how she managed to calm the child with ease and efficiency. "How do you know exactly what he needs?" asked Michael the second time, genuinely impressed. "Experience and attention, that's all," replied Patricia, organizing the baby's things. "With time, you'll learn too, if you want." The word "if" hung in the air between them like an open question. Michael still hadn't made a decision about Joshua's future, and Patricia respected that he needed time to process everything. The next day, Michael tried to maintain his normal routine, putting on his impeccable suit and preparing to go to work. But Patricia noticed that he was slower than usual, distracted, forgetting simple things like where he had left the car keys. "Are you sure you're in condition to work today?" she asked gently. "I have to work, Patricia," he replied, adjusting his tie in the hallway mirror. "Especially now that I'll have to rebuild the household's financial stability. I can't afford to miss work." "And Joshua, do you want me to stay with him today too?" Michael stopped adjusting his tie and looked at her through the mirror. "If you could. I'd pay the extra day, of course. I know it's not your responsibility to take care of him all the time." "No need to worry about extra payment now, Mr. Michael," said Patricia firmly. "What's important is that the baby is well cared for while you get organized." After Michael left, Patricia established a careful routine with Joshua. He was calmer during the day, playing normally and showing the typical development of an 8-month-old. She noticed that he was particularly bright, trying to form little words and showing curiosity about everything around him. During the hours alone with the baby, Patricia couldn't stop thinking about the complexity of the situation. Joshua was, for all practical purposes, motherless, and with a father who questioned his own relationship with the child. It was a situation that could resolve itself in various ways, some very sad for the baby. Around 11 in the morning, the landline rang. It was a woman identifying herself as Dr. Sarah, Joshua's pediatrician, was calling about the overdue routine checkups. "Look, doctor, I'm Patricia, the housekeeper," she explained. "Mr. Michael is going through some personal difficulties. His wife traveled and he's a bit disorganized with the schedule, but Joshua is fine, I can assure you." "I understand. Can you reschedule the appointment for this week?" "It's important not to delay the vaccination schedule too much," the doctor said with professional concern. "I'll speak with Mr. Michael tonight and we'll get in touch," promised Patricia, writing down the clinic's phone number on a piece of paper. Later, she discovered other practical matters were being neglected. Mail was piling up unopened, some bills were nearing their due date, and the baby food supplies were running low. Michael was clearly on autopilot, dealing only with work emergencies but leaving his personal life disorganized. When Michael returned in the late afternoon, Patricia informed him about the pediatrician's call and other practical issues that needed attention. He listened to everything with a distant air, as if the information reached him through a mental fog. "Thank you for taking care of all this, Patricia," he said, loosening his tie. I know I shouldn't burden you with these responsibilities." "Don't worry about that now," replied Patricia. "The important thing is that things don't pile up too much while you recover." During dinner, Joshua was particularly lively, babbling sounds and smiling at Michael whenever he looked his way. It was evident the baby had no idea of the emotional storm surrounding his small existence. "He's calling you," commented Patricia, when Joshua made a sound that vaguely resembled dada. Michael looked at the baby with a pained expression. The struggle between the genuine affection he felt for the child and the bitterness of the discovery about his paternity was clear. "This makes everything harder, Patricia," confessed Michael. "If he were just a stranger, I could make rational decisions, but he knows me, trusts me. How can I simply hand him over to other people?" "And who said you need to hand him over?" asked Patricia gently. "What do you mean?" "You said you've formed bonds with him, that you care, that you're happy when he smiles. Isn't that a father's love? The rest is just papers, tests, documents, but what you feel for him, that's real, isn't it?" Michael remained silent for a long moment, watching Joshua play with a spoon, completely absorbed in his childish exploration. "It's complicated, Patricia. How do I explain to people that I'm raising a child who isn't biologically mine? How do I look at him every day without thinking about Jennifer's betrayal?" "People don't need to know every detail of your life, Mr. Michael," replied Patricia with practiced wisdom. "And as for Mrs. Jennifer's betrayal, well, that's a pain you'll have to overcome regardless of what happens with Joshua. Her wrongdoing shouldn't determine an innocent child's future." That night, Michael asked Patricia to stay again. She noticed he was gradually getting used to having support handling the baby's routine, but also observed he continued keeping an emotional distance from Joshua, as if afraid to let himself love even more a child he might have to give up. During the night, Patricia was awakened by Joshua's unusual crying. When she reached the baby's room, she found him with a high fever and labored breathing. She immediately woke Michael, who became frantic upon seeing the child's condition. "What could be wrong with him? Should we take him to the hospital?" asked Michael, all his emotional resistance fading at the possibility that something serious might be happening to Joshua. "Let's first try to bring down the fever with a lukewarm bath," suggested Patricia, taking control of the situation. "If he doesn't improve in an hour, then we'll go to the emergency room." During the next hour, Michael and Patricia worked together to care for the feverish baby. He followed all her instructions without question, showing a protective and caring side that had been suppressed by the emotional turmoil of recent days. When Joshua finally calmed down and the fever subsided, Michael was visibly relieved. "Thank you, Patricia," he said, gently holding Joshua's tiny hand as he finally fell asleep. "I didn't know what to do. I was desperate, thinking something serious could happen to him." "You care deeply about him," observed Patricia softly. "That became very clear tonight." Michael didn't respond immediately, but continued holding the baby's hand, as if fearing he might disappear without physical contact. "Maybe I've been trying to protect myself," admitted Michael finally, "trying not to get more attached than I already am. But when I saw him sick, I realized it doesn't matter what the tests say. I love this boy." It was a turning point in the whole situation. Patricia saw Michael finally admitting his true feelings, overcoming the barrier he'd built between himself and Joshua because of the paternity discovery. In the following days, the household dynamics began gradually changing. Michael started participating more actively in Joshua's care, asking Patricia about the best ways to care for the baby and showing genuine interest in learning. "How do I know if he's hungry or just wants attention?" asked Michael during breakfast, watching Patricia feed Joshua. "It's a matter of practice," she explained patiently. "Every child develops their own signals. Joshua, for example, when he's hungry, he makes a specific whimper and brings his hand to his mouth. When he wants attention, the cry is louder and he looks directly at whoever's nearby." Michael paid careful attention to all explanations, beginning to develop a deeper understanding of Joshua's needs. Patricia was pleased to see him gradually assuming the role of primary caregiver rather than just depending on her for everything. 1 week after the fever episode, Michael made an important decision. "Patricia, I'd like to make you a proposal," he said during dinner. "I know you have your own home and family, but would it be possible to consider a different arrangement here? Perhaps you could stay with us a few nights per week, at least until I feel more confident caring for Joshua alone." "I can talk with my daughter Emily about this," responded Patricia thoughtfully. "She's an adult and independent, so I believe there wouldn't be problems. But I need to understand exactly what you're proposing." "A temporary arrangement," clarified Michael. "Maybe 3 nights weekly initially, with additional pay corresponding, of course. I need to learn how to be a real father to Joshua, and you're the only person who can teach me that right now." Patricia was touched by his sincerity. It was evident Michael had made the decision to raise Joshua as his son, regardless of DNA results. But she also recognized he needed practical support to transition from single executive to single father. "All right, Mr. Morrison, let's try this arrangement for a few weeks and see how it works," she accepted. That's how Patricia began dividing her time between her home in Queens and the Morrison mansion in Upper East Side. On the nights she stayed at the house, she occupied the guest room and shared with Michael the responsibilities of caring for Joshua. On the other nights, Michael handled them alone, but with the security of knowing he could call her if emergencies arose. Gradually, Michael became more competent and confident. Patricia taught him to prepare bottles at the right temperature, to identify the different types of cries, to change diapers efficiently, and to establish healthy sleep routines for the baby. "The secret is patience," she explained while demonstrating how to bathe Joshua. "Children sense when an adult is nervous or in a hurry. If you stay calm, he will too." Michael absorbed each lesson with determination. Sometimes Patricia saw him studying child development books he had bought, trying to understand scientifically what she had learned intuitively through experience. 1 month after Jennifer's abandonment, Michael was managing to care for Joshua alone during the nights, needing Patricia's help only in specific situations. The baby, in turn, was clearly well adapted to the new family arrangement, developing strong bonds with both Michael and Patricia. It was during this period that the first major legal complication arose. A court officer appeared at the door of the house with a summons related to the divorce papers Jennifer had left. Apparently, she was contesting some aspects of the process through lawyers. "What does this mean?" asked Michael after reading the documents, with Joshua sleeping peacefully in his lap. "It means that Mrs. Jennifer isn't making things simple, even though she abandoned you," interpreted Patricia, who, despite little formal schooling, had much practical wisdom about legal problems. "But she signed the custody waiver. It's here in the papers she left." "A paper signed at home doesn't have the same value as a document signed at a notary with witnesses," explained Patricia. "You're going to need a lawyer to sort this out properly." Michael hired a lawyer specialized in family law, attorney David Campbell, who reviewed all the documentation and explained the complexity of the legal situation. "Your case is complicated because it involves issues of paternity, abandonment, custody, and divorce simultaneously," explained Attorney Campbell during a consultation. "Your ex-wife may be trying to negotiate some financial advantage through these legal appeals." "But she abandoned the child," protested Michael. "How can she have any rights over him after that?" "Legally, abandonment needs to be proven in a very specific way, and the fact that you are not the biological father complicates the situation even further," clarified the lawyer. Patricia accompanied Michael to this consultation, caring for Joshua in the waiting room, but listening to the explanations through the door. She realized the legal process would be long and potentially stressful. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The legal uncertainty began to visibly affect Michael. He started constantly checking if Joshua was okay, as if fearing someone might show up to take him away at any moment. Patricia realized she needed to be strong for both of them during this difficult period. "Mr. Michael, you're worrying too much," she said one night, finding him watching Joshua sleep. "Children sense this anxiety, you know, Etty. It can affect his development." "I know, Patricia, but I can't help it. What if Jennifer gets some court decision that forces me to hand Joshua over to her? Or worse, What if they find out who the biological father is and he decides to claim the child? Let's deal with these problems when they come up, replied Patricia with her practical wisdom. For now, Joshua is fine, healthy, and well cared for. That's what matters right now. During this period of legal uncertainty, Michael and Patricia developed a very collaborative routine for Joshua's care. She noticed he was becoming a present and caring father, very different from the distant executive he had been during the baby's first months. "You've changed a lot since you took over Joshua's care," Patricia commented one morning as they prepared breakfast together. "Changed how?" "You've become more patient, more present. Before, you'd come home and barely notice when the baby was crying. Now you know every little sound he makes." Michael smiled for the first time in weeks. It was true that his relationship with Joshua had deepened enormously. Regardless of the DNA results, he had truly become a father to that child. "You know, Patricia, sometimes I think maybe it was a blessing to discover the truth about Jennifer now, before the lies piled up even more," Michael reflected. "And having to care for Joshua alone forced me to build real bonds with him, not just be a distant provider." "Things sometimes happen for the right reason even when they hurt at the moment," agreed Patricia, who had learned this lesson through her own past difficulties. 2 weeks later, there were new legal developments. Attorney Campbell called with news about Jennifer. "Your ex-wife appears to have left the country," the attorney informed him. "The appeals she had filed were abandoned, and we can't locate her for the hearings. This could be good news for you in terms of custody, but it complicates finalizing the divorce." Michael felt relieved at the possibility that Jennifer wouldn't cause more legal problems, but also frustrated by the ongoing uncertainty about his marital situation. Patricia noticed he was beginning to accept that his life would be a patchwork of imperfect solutions for a while. "The important thing is that no one can question that you're taking good care of Joshua," she said, trying to focus on the positive aspects. "Any judge who saw you together would notice there's a real bond between you." It was during this period that an event occurred that would completely change the dynamics of the situation. Joshua was playing on the living room rug when he started crying strangely, unlike any pattern Michael or Patricia recognized. "This isn't hunger or sleep," said Patricia, picking up the baby and noticing he was very warm. "And the fever is rising very quickly." Within minutes, Joshua developed a very high fever and began showing worrying symptoms. Michael didn't hesitate to take him immediately to the hospital, with Patricia accompanying them. In the pediatric emergency room, the doctors identified a serious infection requiring immediate hospitalization. Michael was in total panic, but Patricia maintained the necessary calm to handle the hospital bureaucracy and take care of practical aspects. "You need to sign here authorizing the procedures," said the nurse, handing over a stack of forms. "Can I sign? I mean, he's not—" Michael began to question, but Patricia interrupted him. "You're registered as the father on the child's documents, aren't you? Then you can sign. We'll sort out any legal issues later," she said firmly. During the 3 days Joshua was hospitalized, Michael practically never left the hospital. Patricia took turns with him in providing care, but noticed he was extremely distressed, not about the paternity issue, but from genuine fear of losing the child. "If anything happens to him, Patricia, I'll never forgive myself," confessed Michael on the second night, watching Joshua sleeping connected to the medical equipment. "Nothing will happen," reassured Patricia. "The doctors said the infection is responding well to the antibiotics. In a few days, you'll be back home again." "It's not just that. It's that I realized that if I lost him now, it would be like losing a real son. It doesn't matter what the blood tests say. He is my son, Patricia, in every way that matters." It was a moment of complete emotional clarity for Michael. The medical crisis had dissipated all questions about his feelings toward Joshua. He was absolutely certain that he wanted to raise that child as his son, regardless of any circumstances. When Joshua was discharged from the hospital, he was completely recovered and more excited than ever. Michael, in turn, was transformed. Patricia noticed that he had finally overcome the emotional barrier that had prevented him from fully accepting fatherhood. "Patricia, I need to talk to you about some changes I want to make," said Michael after they returned from the hospital. "What kind of changes?" "First, I want to officially start the adoption process for Joshua. Attorney Campbell said it's possible, considering that Jennifer abandoned custody and that I've taken care of him since birth, even though I'm not the biological father. That's wonderful, Mr. Michael, said Patricia, genuinely happy. Second, I want to formalize your situation here too. You've saved both my life and his. I don't want you to be just an employee who sometimes stays to help. I want you to be officially his nanny, with a signed contract and everything in order. Patricia was surprised by the proposal. It was a significant change in her professional life, but also an opportunity to have more stability and continue caring for a child she had grown deeply fond of. "Can I think about the proposal?" she asked. "Of course, no rush. But I want you to know that you are my family now, not in the traditional sense, but in the real sense. We are three people who take care of each other." In the following days, Patricia talked at length with her daughter Emily about Michael's proposal. Emily, who worked as a receptionist at a medical office, understood the advantages of the offer. "Mum, you like this job, and you've already formed bonds with the baby," said Emily during lunch. "Besides, the salary he's offering is much better than what you could get elsewhere, and if he's formalizing everything, you'd have labor rights that you don't have as a housekeeper." "That's true, but I'm worried about getting too involved in this family's life," confessed Patricia. "It's already happened more than it should have. If something goes wrong, I could get hurt." "Mum, from what you've told me, this man has completely changed since he took over the baby's care, and the child needs stability. You all seem to be forming a functional family, even if it's not traditional." Emily was right, and Patricia knew it. Her concern was more about emotional self-protection than practical matters. She had become very attached to Joshua and had also developed genuine respect for Michael, seeing him transform from an emotionally distant man into a dedicated father. A week later, Patricia officially accepted Michael's proposal. They signed a formal work contract, establishing responsibilities, schedules, and benefits. More important than the legal aspects, however, was the feeling that they were creating a stable family structure for Joshua. "Thank you, Patricia," said Michael when they finished the paperwork. "Joshua is very lucky to have you taking care of him." "We're all lucky, Mr. Michael," she replied. "Sometimes families form in unexpected ways. Over the following months, their routine settled very harmoniously. Michael worked during the day, but always came home eager to spend time with Joshua. Patricia cared for the baby during work hours and managed the house, but had also become a kind of parenting consultant, helping Michael make decisions about the child's education and development. Joshua thrived in this stable environment. He was developing rapidly, starting to crawl and showing a cheerful, curious personality. It was clear he felt safe and loved by both adults caring for him. "He's trying to say Patricia," Michael commented one day, hearing Joshua babble sounds that vaguely resembled her name. "Children sometimes say the name of whoever is most present first," Patricia explained. "It doesn't mean he loves you less." "I know. Actually, I'm glad he's formed strong bonds with you too. It means he has multiple sources of love and security." The relationship between Michael and Patricia had also evolved into something very different from the original employer-employee dynamic. They collaborated as partners in raising Joshua, respecting each other's opinions and making important decisions together. "What do you think about enrolling Joshua in a preschool when he turns one?" Michael asked during dinner. "I think it would be good for his socialization," Patricia agreed, "but it has to be a place that takes good care of him. Young children need lots of individual attention. We can visit some options together and decide which is best." These conversations became routine, creating a sense of genuine parenting partnership between them. 6 months after the new routine began, Michael received definitive news about the legal situation. Attorney Campbell managed to locate Jennifer through international contacts and discovered she had remarried in Europe and was pregnant by another man. She signed a final relinquishment of all rights to Joshua, the attorney informed. Apparently, she wants to completely sever any connection with her previous life in the United States. This means the adoption process can proceed without complications. Michael felt relieved, but also a pang of sadness at how easily Jennifer had discarded not just him, but also an innocent child. "It's sad, but maybe it's for the best," Patricia commented when he shared the news. "Joshua deserves people who truly want him, not someone who sees him as a burden. You're right, and now I can finally process the adoption without fear of future complications. The official adoption process for Joshua took a few more months, but went smoothly. During the social visits that were part of the legal procedure, social workers were impressed by the family structure Michael and Patricia had created. "It's unusual, but clearly works," the caseworker commented. "The child is well developed, happy, and has 2 stable parental figures. Mr. Morrison demonstrates real parenting competence, and Ms. Williams provides excellent complementary support." When the adoption was officially finalized, Michael organized a small celebration at home. He invited only Emily, Patricia's daughter, and attorney Campbell to witness the special moment. "Now it's official," Michael said, holding Joshua, who was completely unaware of the moment's importance, more interested in playing with the colorful ribbons from the decorations. "He was always your son," Patricia said softly. "Now there's just signed paper confirming it." It was an emotional moment for everyone present. Michael had completed an impressive journey of personal transformation, going from a betrayed and confused man to a confident and dedicated father. Patricia had also found new professional and personal purpose, using her maternal experience to help create a healthy environment for Joshua. In the months that followed, the family dynamic continued to evolve positively. Joshua began taking his first steps, spoke his first clear words, and developed a very sociable and affectionate personality. "Daddy," Joshua said clearly one day, reaching out his arms to Michael when he arrived from work. Michael was moved to tears. It was the first time he had heard the word said unequivocally, and it represented the emotional confirmation of everything he had fought for. "Did you hear that, Patricia? He called me Daddy." "I heard," laughed Patricia, seeing Michael's genuine happiness. "And now you'll have to get used to it, because children this age repeat their favorite word 100 times a day." Michael spent the rest of the afternoon playing with Joshua, patiently responding to every "daddy" the boy pronounced with growing enthusiasm. During this period, Patricia also received special recognition. Joshua began calling her Pat, his childlike version of Patricia, and clearly saw her as a second maternal figure. "Sometimes I wonder if we're not confusing him with 2 adults taking care of him all the time," commented Michael one evening. "Children who have more love available become more secure, not more confused," reassured Patricia. "He knows that you both care for him in different but complementary ways." It was true. Joshua showed secure attachment both to Michael and Patricia, but also knew how to distinguish their roles. Michael was the one he sought for more lively play and adventures, while Patricia was his source of comfort when he was tired or needed basic care. A year and a half after Jennifer's abandonment, the non-traditional family that Michael and Patricia had created was working perfectly. Joshua was a happy and well-developed child, Michael had become an exemplary father, and Patricia had found renewed purpose in her professional life. During this period, there were some unexpected developments that tested the stability they had built. Michael began receiving social pressure from some acquaintances who questioned his decision to raise a child who wasn't biologically his. "I don't understand how you can look at that boy without thinking about Jennifer's betrayal," commented a co-worker during a corporate lunch. "Because Joshua has nothing to do with Jennifer's betrayal," Michael replied firmly. "He's an innocent child who needed a family. I chose to be that family. But there are so many children available for adoption who truly have no family. Why complicate yourself with this situation?" "Because love isn't logical," explained Michael. "I love this boy regardless of genetics or circumstances. He's my son in every way that matters." These conversations sometimes bothered Michael, but they also reinforced his certainty about the choices he had made. Patricia supported him when he came home frustrated with others' comments. "People talk because they don't understand," she said with her practical wisdom. "Those who've never lived through such a situation always think they'd know how to do better. But what matters is that you're happy, and Joshua is well cared for." "You're right. It's just that sometimes it's tiring having to explain our choices to others." "Then stop explaining," Patricia suggested simply. "The only ones who need to know about our family are us." Another pressure they faced came from Michael's own family. Your sister Rebecca finally found out about the situation through comments from mutual acquaintances and called questioning his decisions. "Michael, have you lost your mind?" she said during a tense phone call. "How can you raise a child that isn't even yours? And on top of that with the help of a housekeeper?" "Rebecca, you don't understand the situation," Michael tried to explain. "Joshua is my son. And Patricia isn't just a housekeeper, she's a partner in raising him." "A partner? Michael, you're confusing relationships. She's your employee, not a family member." "In our home, she is family," Michael replied firmly. "And if you can't accept that, perhaps it's better we keep contact just between us without involving the children." The conversation ended tensely, but Michael didn't regret defending both Joshua and Patricia. He had learned that sometimes you must choose between others' approval and your own happiness. Patricia overheard part of this phone conversation and was touched by Michael's defense of her, but also worried. "Mr. Morrison, I don't want to be a problem between you and your family," she said. "You're not a problem, Patricia. The problem is my sister's outdated mindset. Our family works well as it is. But perhaps I should keep more distance, be more formal." "No," Michael interrupted decisively. "Our dynamic works because it's genuine. We won't change who we are to satisfy people who don't even live with us." This episode, paradoxically, strengthened the bonds between Michael, Patricia, and Joshua even further. They realized they had created something special, worth protecting against external pressures. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. 2 years after beginning his journey as an adoptive father, Michael faced a new challenging situation. During a routine checkup with Joshua's pediatrician, the doctor commented on the importance of knowing the child's complete family medical history. For optimal medical monitoring, it would be important to have information about possible genetic predispositions, explained Dr. Henry, the pediatrician. "Do you have any contact with the biological family?" Michael explained the situation, clarifying that he didn't know the biological father's identity and that the biological mother had completely cut off contact. "I understand. It's a delicate situation," commented the doctor. "Well, we'll monitor Joshua's development carefully and handle any health issues as they arise." Leaving the office, Michael found himself thinking for the first time in a long time about Joshua's biological father. Not for emotional reasons, but for medical responsibility. What if there was some important genetic condition they should know about? "What do you think, Patricia? Should I try to find out who Joshua's biological father is?" he asked on their way home. "Why?" Patricia replied pragmatically. "If it's for medical reasons, we'll deal with problems if they appear. If it's for legal matters, you already have the official adoption. And if it's out of curiosity, well, curiosity sometimes brings unnecessary problems." "You're right, it's just that, what if this man doesn't even know he has a son? What if he wanted to meet Joshua?" "What if he wanted to take Joshua away?" Patricia countered. "Mr. Morrison, you're fine just as you are. It's not worth stirring up a hornet's nest over hypothetical questions." Michael realized Patricia was right. His life with Joshua was stable and happy. Searching for the biological father could create complications without any real benefit for the child. However, fate sometimes has unexpected ways of bringing to light issues we try to avoid. 3 months later, during a child's birthday party for a daughter of Michael's co-workers, something surprising happened. Joshua was playing with other children when a woman approached Michael with a strange expression on her face. "Sorry to bother you, but is that boy over there your son?" she asked, pointing at Joshua. "Yes, that's Joshua. Why?" replied Michael, instantly alert. "It's just, he looks extremely like my brother. The resemblance is striking." Michael felt his heart accelerate. This was exactly the kind of situation he had tried to avoid. "Does your brother live here in New York?" he asked, trying to remain calm. "Yes, he works as an engineer at a construction company. He's married, has 2 children. He's a good person, you know." "I see," said Michael, not knowing exactly how to handle the situation. "Well, sometimes coincidences are indeed impressive. Would it be very strange if, my brother had some relationships before getting married. Is it possible that You met the boy's mother about 3 years ago? Michael realized the woman was delicately suggesting her brother could be Joshua's biological father. This was exactly the scenario he had feared. Look, it's a complicated situation, said Michael, trying to end the conversation. I'd prefer not to go into personal details. Of course. I understand, said the woman, but she wrote something on a piece of paper and handed it to him. If you ever want to talk about this, this is my brother Christopher's phone number. He's a very responsible person. Michael put the paper in his pocket, but spent the rest of the party very uncomfortable. Joshua continued playing normally, unaware that his biological father might be just a phone call away. On the way back home, Michael told Patricia what had happened. She listened to everything in silence, watching Joshua, who was dozing in his car seat. "And now? What are you going to do?" she finally asked. "I don't know, Patricia. Part of me wants to simply ignore it and move on, but another part thinks maybe I should at least investigate. What if he really is the biological father? What if he wanted to meet Joshua? What if he wanted custody?" insisted Patricia, on the issue that worried her most. "He couldn't get it. I have the official adoption and have cared for Joshua since birth. But, I don't know. Maybe Joshua has the right to know his biological origins." "Joshua is 2 years old, Michael. He's not asking about biological origins. He's asking if he can have more cookies and when he can play at the park. This issue is more yours than his." Patricia was right, as always. Michael was creating a dilemma that might not really exist, but the paper with Christopher's phone number remained in his pocket for several weeks, like a constant reminder of the unresolved issue. During this period, Michael observed Joshua with renewed attention, trying to identify physical traits that could confirm or deny this Christopher's paternity. It was true there was some resemblance to the man he had briefly seen at the party, but resemblances can be coincidental. "You're worrying too much about this," commented Patricia one evening, noticing Michael seemed distant. "Joshua remains the same child as always, no matter who the biological parents are." "I know, you're right. It's just, what if I'm depriving him of knowing a biological family that would love him too? What if that biological family wants nothing to do with a child from an extramarital relationship?" countered Patricia. "What if this causes problems in that man's marriage? What if? We can imagine 1,000 scenarios, Michael, but the reality is that Joshua is fine, happy, and loved. Sometimes it's better not to fix what isn't broken." 2 weeks later, Michael made a decision. He would call Christopher, not to hand over Joshua or create a complicated situation, but to get medical information that could be important for the child's future. "Hello, is this Christopher? My name is Michael Morrison. Your sister gave me your number during a children's party. She said my son looks a lot like you," said Michael, getting straight to the point. "Oh, yes. Amanda told me about that. It's a delicate situation, isn't it?" replied Christopher, who seemed prepared for the call. "Yes, look, I'll be direct. My son was adopted by me after his biological mother abandoned him. I have no idea who the biological father is, but there's a possibility it could be you. I'm calling mainly for medical reasons, to find out if there are any genetic predispositions I should know about." "I understand," said Christopher, clearly uncomfortable. "Well, I had some relationships before I got married. It's possible that—" "What's the biological mother's name?" "Jennifer Taylor, now Jennifer Morrison, but I believe she may have changed her name again." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I knew a Jennifer around the time you're talking about," admitted Christopher finally. "We had a brief relationship. She said she was separated, but I later found out she was married. I ended the relationship immediately when I learned the truth." "That description matches," confirmed Michael. "Look, I'm not calling to create problems for you or your family. I just want to know about hereditary medical issues, in case you really are the biological father." "I can understand your concern," said Christopher. "In my family, we don't have a history of serious genetic diseases. Some cases of type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure in the older members, but nothing too out of the ordinary." "Thank you for the information. That helps me a lot." "Can I ask a question?" said Christopher hesitantly. "How is the child? Is she well taken care of?" "He," corrected Michael. "It's a boy named Joshua, and yes, he's very well taken care of. He's a happy, healthy, intelligent child. He has everything he needs. That's good. I always wondered if something like this could have happened with Jennifer. After we broke up, she looked for me a few times, but I didn't want to get back together because I found out about the lies. I understand. Well, thank you for the medical information. I think that's all I needed to know. Wait, said Christopher before Michael hung up. Would you like me to take a DNA test? To be sure about paternity. Michael hesitated. It was exactly the question he had feared. What would that accomplish? He asked carefully. Well, if I really am the biological father, maybe I should, I don't know, contribute in some way. Not financially, because you seem to be taking good care of him, but it's hard to explain. Christopher, can I be direct with you? Said Michael. I love that boy, as if he were my biological son. I've taken care of him since he was born, stayed up through the nights when he was sick, taught him his first steps, celebrated his first words. You seem like a good person, but Joshua already has a father. He has a stable and loving family. I understand that, replied Christopher quickly. I'm not trying to interfere or cause problems. It's just that if he is my biological son, I would like to know. Maybe in the future he'll want to know his origins, and I would like to be prepared for that moment if it comes. It was a sensible and responsible argument. Michael realized that Christopher wasn't trying to claim rights or cause turmoil, just honestly dealing with a complex possibility. Let me talk to some people about this, and I'll call you back, said Michael. It's a decision that affects several people, so I need to think it through carefully. Of course, I understand completely. And Michael, thank you for taking such good care of him. Whether he's my biological son or not, it's clear that you're a good father. After hanging up, Michael felt more confused than before the call. Christopher had shown himself to be a responsible and sensitive person, exactly the type anyone would want as their child's biological father. But that made the situation more complicated, not simpler. When he told Patricia about the conversation, she listened carefully before giving her opinion. This man seems like a good person, she admitted. But Michael, taking this test will change everything, no matter the result. If it's positive, you'll have to deal with how to involve him in Joshua's life. If it's negative, there will always be doubt about who the real biological father is. Are you sure you want to open that door? I'm not sure about anything, Patricia, but maybe it's worse to always wonder. Or maybe it's better to leave things as they are, she countered. You need to decide if you want to find out the truth for practical reasons or just out of curiosity. Because curiosity isn't always worth the trouble it can bring. Michael decided to consult Attorney Campbell, his lawyer, about the legal implications of confirming Joshua's biological paternity. Legally, you're safe, the attorney assured. The adoption is finalized and Joshua is legally your son, regardless of who the biological father is. But confirming biological paternity could create complex emotional and family issues. What kind of issues? Well, if this Christopher is confirmed as the biological father, he might want to establish some kind of relationship with the child. Even without legal custody rights, there could be moral pressure to allow some contact, and that could be complicated for everyone involved. And if I simply decide not to take the test, that's a perfectly valid option. You have no legal obligation to determine biological paternity, especially considering you've taken full responsibility for the child since birth. After the legal consultation, Michael felt more secure about his rights, but still uncertain about the right decision to make. It was a situation without precedent in his life, and he wanted to make the wisest choice possible. Over the following days, Michael watched Joshua playing and interacting normally, trying to imagine how he would explain to him in the future that his biological father was available, but he had decided not to make contact. On the other hand, he also tried to imagine dealing with a third parental figure in the stable life they had built. "Patricia, can I ask you something?" he said one night while putting Joshua to bed. "Of course. If you were in my situation, what would you do?" Patricia thought for a long moment before answering. "Michael, I raised my children without ever knowing where their father was. My 3 children grew up knowing their father had left and never returned. They always knew they only had me as a parental reference. And how did they handle that? Each differently. My oldest always wanted to look for his father when he grew up. He found him and was very disappointed because the man had started a new family and didn't want contact. My middle daughter never showed interest in meeting him, and Emily always said I was enough family. What did you learn from these different experiences? That there's no single right answer. Every child has their own need about whether to know their origins or not. Joshua is still very young, but one day he might ask questions. The question is, do you want to have answers to give him, or do you want him to find out on his own when he grows up? It was a perspective Michael hadn't fully considered. Perhaps the issue wasn't what to do now, but how to prepare for the questions Joshua might ask in the future. After 2 weeks of reflection, Michael made his decision. He called Christopher again. "Christopher, I thought a lot about our conversation. I think it would be good for us to do the DNA test, but with some conditions." "What conditions?" "First, regardless of the result, nothing changes in Joshua's current family structure. I remain the legal and primary father, and he continues to live with me. Second, if you are confirmed as the biological father, any future contact with Joshua will be gradual and only when he is old enough to understand the situation. Third, your family cannot be harmed by this revelation." "All these conditions seem fair and sensible to me," agreed Christopher. "In fact, I talked to my wife about the situation, and she was very understanding. She agrees that if I am the biological father, I have a moral responsibility to at least be available if the child wants to meet me in the future." "Your wife seems like a special person," commented Michael, genuinely impressed by both their maturity. "She is, and she said something that stuck with me. If he is your son, he's already lucky to have such a dedicated father taking care of him. Our responsibility would only be to complement that, not complicate it." The conversation left Michael more at ease about proceeding with the test. Christopher and his wife seemed like mature people who wouldn't cause unnecessary drama in Joshua's life. The DNA test was done discreetly at a private lab. Both Michael and Christopher provided samples, and Joshua's genetic material was collected through a simple mouth swab during a routine pediatrician visit. During the week of waiting for the results, Michael remained calm externally, but Patricia noticed he was anxious. "Regardless of the result, nothing changes between you and Joshua," she reminded him. "You continue to be the father who matters in his life." "I know, Patricia. It's just that part of me hopes it's negative, so we can move forward without complications. But another part hopes it's positive, so Joshua can have complete information about his origins when he wants to." "What will be, said Patricia with her practical philosophy, "and we'll deal with whatever result comes." The results arrived on a Thursday afternoon. Dr. Henry, the pediatrician who had coordinated the sample collection, called Michael. "The results are in," said the doctor. "Christopher Davis Johnson is confirmed as Joshua's biological father with 99.7% probability." Michael felt a strange mix of relief and apprehension. Relief at finally having a definitive answer, but apprehension about what this would mean for the future. "Thank you, Doctor. I'll pass this information on to the people involved." When he told Patricia, she reacted with her typical practicality. "Well, now we know," she said simply. "The question is, what do we do with this information?" "For now, nothing," decided Michael. "Joshua is still too young to understand anything about this. We'll keep the information for when it's appropriate." Michael called Christopher to inform him of the result. His reaction was one of mature responsibility. "So, it's confirmed," said Christopher, his voice filled with emotion. "I have a son I didn't even know about. It's a very strange feeling. How are you dealing with it?" "Well, it's complex. There's a part of me that wants to meet him immediately, but I understand that wouldn't be best for him right now. And there's another part that feels guilty for not having been present from the start." "Christopher, you had no way of knowing," Michael reminded him. "Jennifer hid the pregnancy from all of us. You didn't have the opportunity to choose to be present." "That's true, and from what you've told me, it seems Joshua was lucky to have you as his father. Perhaps it was better this way, considering the circumstances." "What do you want to do now?" asked Michael. "For now, just knowing he's well cared for already puts me at ease. When he's older, perhaps we can talk about the possibility of him getting to know me if he wants to. but only when you think it's appropriate. Thank you for your understanding, Christopher. That means a lot. Michael, can I ask a favor? Could you send me a photo of him from time to time? Nothing that compromises your privacy, just so I can keep up with how he's growing. Michael considered the request. It seemed reasonable and wouldn't interfere with their routine. I think I can do that. Maybe a photo every 2 or 3 months, just so you can follow his development. That would be perfect. Thank you very much. After hanging up, Michael felt surprisingly good about how the situation was being handled. Christopher was showing exemplary maturity, respecting the established boundaries, and prioritizing Joshua's well-being above his own desires to meet his biological son. In the months that followed, Michael occasionally sent photos of Joshua to Christopher, who always responded with gratitude and affectionate comments about the child's development. It was a discreet arrangement that didn't interfere with the family's daily life, but kept Christopher appropriately connected. During this period, Joshua continued to develop wonderfully. He was beginning to form simple sentences, showing sharp intelligence and a cheerful, affectionate personality. The emotional stability provided by Michael and Patricia was clearly benefiting his development. "Daddy play," Joshua would say, pulling Michael by the hand toward the toys. "Ma eat," he'd say when he wanted Patricia to help him with his meals. It was evident that he saw both adults as complementary parental figures, each with their specific role in his life. One day, when Joshua was almost 3 years old, he asked a question that caught Michael off guard. "Daddy, where's Mommy?" It was the first time he had shown curiosity about the absence of a maternal figure. Michael looked at Patricia, who was nearby seeking guidance on how to respond. "Well, Joshua, some families are different," Michael said carefully. "You have Daddy and Ma taking care of you. That's our family. Is Ma Mommy?" asked Joshua, looking at Patricia with curiosity. Patricia knelt down to his level to answer. "I take care of you with lots of love, like a mommy would," she said softly. "But I'm Ma. You have a special family. You have Daddy, you have Ma, and that's very special." Joshua seemed satisfied with the explanation and went back to playing, but the moment left both Michael and Patricia thoughtful about how to handle future questions about the family structure. "Sooner or later he'll ask more specific questions," Patricia commented that night. "Have you thought about how you'll explain about his biological mother and about Christopher when he's older?" "I think about it constantly," Michael admitted. "I think I'll be honest, but in an age-appropriate way. When he's old enough to understand, I'll explain that his biological mother couldn't take care of him, so I chose to be his father. And if he wants to meet his biological father, I'll facilitate that contact." "That's a sensible approach," Patricia agreed. "The important thing is that he always knows he was wanted and cared for with love." 2 years later, when Joshua was 5 years old and about to start school, Michael received an unexpected call from Christopher. "Michael, I hope I'm not bothering you, but I wanted to share some news," said Christopher, his voice clearly emotional. "Of course, go ahead." "My wife is pregnant with our 3rd child, and that made me think a lot about Joshua. I don't want to interfere in your lives, but would it be possible for me to meet him in person someday? Just to meet. Talk for a few minutes. He doesn't need to know who I am. He can think I'm just a friend of yours." Michael considered the request. Joshua was now a communicative and intelligent child, capable of social interaction with adults. A brief, supervised meeting didn't seem harmful. "Let me talk to Joshua about having visitors and see how he reacts. If he's comfortable, maybe we can arrange a casual meeting." "That would be amazing," said Christopher, clearly grateful. "I just want to see him in person once, know what his personality is like, hear his voice. The photos are wonderful, but it's not the same." "I completely understand. I'll see what I can do." Michael spoke with Patricia about the possibility of the meeting, and she agreed it could be beneficial as long as it was well managed. "Maybe we can meet him somewhere neutral, like a park," she suggested, "and introduce Christopher as Daddy's friend who wanted to meet Joshua." "That's a good idea. That way we don't create confusing expectations for Joshua, but allow Christopher to fulfill his wish." The meeting was scheduled for a Saturday at a public park that Joshua liked to visit. Michael explained to the boy that a friend of his would like to meet him, and Joshua reacted with the typical curiosity of a 5-year-old. When Christopher arrived at the park, Michael saw him before he even approached. The physical resemblance between Christopher and Joshua was truly striking. Not just the facial features, but also the way they walked and some gestures. It was undeniable that they were biological father and son. "Joshua, this is Christopher, a friend of Daddy's," Michael introduced when Christopher approached. "Hi, Christopher," said Joshua enthusiastically, extending his hand to greet as Michael had taught him. Christopher was clearly moved as he shook Joshua's small hand. Michael noticed he was struggling to control his emotions. "Nice to meet you, Joshua," said Christopher with a slightly choked voice. "Your dad told me you're very smart and polite. It's true." "I can read a few words," Joshua announced proudly, "and I can count to 50. "How impressive," replied Christopher, genuinely impressed. "You're going to be a very smart boy when you grow up." For an hour they played together in the park. Christopher joined in Joshua's activities with natural enthusiasm, pushing the swing, helping on the slide, and playing ball. It was evident he had a natural ease with children, probably developed through experience with his other 2 children. Joshua had a lot of fun with the visitor, treating Christopher like any friendly adult who showed interest in his activities. To him, there was nothing special about the situation other than gaining another playmate. When it was time to say goodbye, Christopher knelt down to Joshua's level. "It was really nice to meet you, Joshua. You're a very special boy," he said, clearly making an effort to keep his voice steady. "Will you come back to play another day?" Joshua asked innocently. Christopher looked at Michael, who nodded discreetly. "If your dad allows it, maybe we can meet here again someday," replied Christopher. "Cool. Bye, Christopher." After Joshua's goodbye as he rushed off to play on another ride, Christopher and Michael had a few minutes to talk alone. "Thank you," said Christopher, with tears in his eyes. "I hadn't imagined how emotional it would be to meet him in person. He's exactly as I pictured, smart, affectionate, well-mannered. You're doing an amazing job as a father." "He really is a special kid," Michael agreed, "and you behaved perfectly today. He felt comfortable with you right away." "May I ask, would it be possible for us to do this occasionally, maybe every few months? I don't want to be intrusive, but it's hard to explain how I feel about him." "I think we can do that," Michael agreed, "as long as it continues to feel natural and uncomplicated for Joshua. Of course, the last thing I'd want is to confuse him or create awkward situations." End of story. So, what did you think of the story? Share with us in the comments how you felt when you found out how everything turned out. Do you think Michael made the right decision? And Patricia, wasn't she a real-life hero? Leave your honest opinion below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one.